Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Stetson. I am a recruiting industry veteran, and I'm here to answer one of the toughest interview questions. Now, they're all kind of tough, and they all have a purpose. But this one sometimes is extra tough for most people, and I think it's kind of a trick question. They're all trick questions, but this one's a real trick question. So the question is, what is your biggest weakness? And I take a deep breath because I hate this question, and I'm sure you interviewing for a job hate this question. The person that asks this question often doesn't know the purpose of this question. So let me back up a little bit. Oftentimes in an interview, you're not talking directly to the hiring manager. You're talking to HR or a recruiter or somebody that's probably more in an administrative role than they are in a decision-making role. And I say that because they're probably less experienced in asking interview questions than you would think. You would think that they're interviewing people, so they're good at interviewing. It may not be the case. But I think it's always important to talk to your audience. Who's your audience? Who are you speaking to? So the weakness question is often asked very bluntly because the person that's interviewing you with the little experience or a lot of experience that they have may not understand the point of that question. For me as a recruiter who's been doing this for 30 plus years, the point of this question, and I don't ask it this way, but the point of this question for me is really to understand you. Now, remember, you've put together a great resume. You've edited the resume. You've, run it through AI. You've done whatever to massage your resume to make you look like a superstar. The purpose of this question is really to find out the real you. What makes you tick? What's behind the scenes? When I ask this question in a different way. I kind of walk through my process when I interview somebody. But when I get to this type of question, like, kind of the weakness question or the strength, everybody is good at answering the strength question. Sometimes I roll this into the strengths question, depending on the person and the role I'm interviewing the person for. Where you're comfortable asking or answering the strengths question. What are your strengths? What are you good at? But I also roll this in. What are you not good at, or what don't you like? Tell me about you. I know the resume looks great, but I don't know you. And this is where we get to know you and the real you, and the real you comes out. The practiced or unpracticed, probably, questions and responses come out. When someone that's inexperienced, that is reading off the script, asks you, what's your biggest weakness? You've got to remember, and if you've listened to any LinkedIn events or any other podcasts I put together, I always remind people of Miranda rights. Now, here in the United States, Miranda rights are given to someone that the police is detaining or going to arrest. And that boils down to you have the right to remain silent, okay, which you can't do in an interview. But the next line is everything you say, and they say in the Miranda rights, can be used against you. But I like to change that. Everything you say will be used against you. So remember Miranda rights when you're answering these questions or any interview question. Everything you say will be used against you. So how do you change that? They're looking for the weakness. They're looking for the real you to come out. Now, this is a trick question because you don't want to say, oh, I have no weakness. Well, we all have weaknesses. Some of us have more weaknesses than others. It's what do you want to disclose? What do you really want to share? Essentially, you want to share is things that kind of show some transparency behind you, that you're real person, that you're relatable, that you acknowledge you've made mistakes. But in answering this question, acknowledge you made a mistake, but then answer it like, but here's how I'm taking care of this. For example, you know, biggest weakness has always really been, let's just hypothetically just grab something, PowerPoint. I've had a problem with PowerPoint, but I took a class. I've been taking some classes on technology, PowerPoint, and it's really helped me broaden not only PowerPoint, but other skills that I didn't even realize I didn't know until I started playing with them, till I started digging into them. And now I'm getting better at it. I'm not an expert in PowerPoint, but I'm getting better at it. And I believe in life is short, and we're here for a short period of time, and I've got to learn and grow every day. And this is part of my learning process. And I'm not afraid to make mistakes, but I don't want to make the same mistake twice. And PowerPoint has been a problem, something I've ignored, but I've learned, I've grown, I've taken classes. I'm now teaching PowerPoint, whatever. You can cover things like that in very sincere terms, that this has been a problem for you, but you've figured out how to address that and you've overcome that. Maybe you're not an expert at it. Maybe it's still a problem. You're still working on it. Whatever that may be, they want to see some, really the real you. What's about you? Now, the problem you run into, here's the problem you run into, and I've seen this happen, where you have somebody junior interviewing you. They'll write down PowerPoint. Your weakness is PowerPoint. Even though you've overcome that, you've showed how you overcome that. So that's a risk you run when you throw out a weakness. And you don't want to give them too soft of a weakness. You want to be transparent. You want to be honest. And if they don't write it down, then forget it. Like, it's not the job for you. I always say the interview for any company is only as good as its biggest weakness. Sometimes companies put junior people in the front lines of interviewing for key roles. I don't get that. Doesn't make sense to me. Like, your people should be the most important asset. They're certainly your most expensive asset for most companies is payroll. And you want to ensure that you're hiring the right people at every level. And putting junior people in the interview process, and this is just a rant for companies, don't do it. Like, you're wasting money. You're not saving money by putting a junior person in the interview process. They're not skilled enough. They're not experienced enough. They don't know enough about people. People are a tough thing. AI can't figure it out. Okay. AI can figure out answers and responses, but they can't figure out people. They can't get into the heads of people. They can understand how people think, but having somebody on the front lines that's experienced, that can understand and dig in deep and expand on questions, is strategically important. But biggest weakness, it's a trick question. Be ready to answer it for every company. Be ready to answer it more than once. Have multiple weaknesses and answers for those. And don't make them all pretty because it sounds fake. Have sincere, transparent answers that show you're learning, you're growing, and you recognize you have a weakness. People that go in that say, I've got no weakness, are usually inexperienced interviewers, are afraid, have a fear of kind of sharing. Interviewers want to relate to you, and we all have weaknesses. Sometimes we don't share them. Most of the time we don't share them. But they want you to be relatable, but they want you to be able to learn and to grow and to understand, you've made mistakes, but you've overcome those mistakes. I asked this question. Scott asked this question. I don't really ask what's your biggest weakness, because I think it's a defensive question. When you ask that, the defenses go up, and it's kind of like other things. It's about the tact and the timing of asking this question. So for me, if you're a recruiter, pay attention here. I ask in this order the reason. First of all, reason, why are you considering a change, or why do you want to go to work for our organization? It shows me kind of what's in your head. And it gives me an opportunity to kind of expand on those answers. Like, well, I'm looking for more money, or I don't like my job, or I don't like this. But the reason also gives the person interviewing the ability to expand on what kind of research they've done for the company. Like if they go, well, I'm looking for a career opportunity, and I understand from the homework I've done with ABC Company that you guys offer more career paths or whatever it is. And then as the recruiter, I ask the next thing is, okay, tell me about what you're good at. I see a lot of great things on the resume, but tell me about what you're good at. What are your strengths? And if they're junior, or if I can tell that they're struggling, I'll also throw, let me ask you a couple questions, interview questions. Your strengths. What are you good at? But while you're thinking about that, what are you not good at, or what are your weaknesses, or what do you want to stay away from? So it softens the question. It gives them the opportunity to kind of think through as they're giving their strengths, and then they're giving their weaknesses, or if they want to take the easier approach on what they're not good at or what they don't like. And for me, that's important. Like if they don't want to share a weakness, but they want to share what they don't like, I want to get to know them. For me, that whole question is about getting to know them. What's behind the scenes? And we all have likes and dislikes. Like there's all things out there that we don't like. And what don't you like? What do you want to stay away from? Because we don't want to put you in a position that you don't like, or you're not going to be comfortable in, or not going to enjoy. Like we want you to enjoy your job. And you're going to do better if you enjoy and like what you're doing in the division or whatever product line or whatever it is. And then for me, the next question after that is, because it warms somebody up, it gets you comfortable with them, and there's more filler in between at times. But for me, the next question is really income, the compensation question, which is a very personal question. But most people that have answered the reason, and the strengths and the weaknesses, they're comfortable with me. We've built rapport. And the next question, when I ask them the income question, it's an easier question. So if you're interviewing people, get to know people. Stop asking what's your biggest weakness? It's just not a fair question. And if you are going to ask it in a nice way. Don't throw up the defense lines, because if a candidate flipped this around and said, what's your company's biggest problem? Just bluntly, without warming it up, getting to that point, you wouldn't like them. Now, you can ask that question. An interviewer, a job seeker can ask you that question. Okay, what's the biggest problem that the company is facing right now? How are they overcoming it? Like you can ask that, but you can't just bluntly ask the question like, what's your biggest weakness? Like warm it up a little, soften it a little, make people comfortable. People are very uncomfortable. Interviewing is a stressful time. If you're interviewing a candidate, make this a comfortable process for them. You can do that. If you're a candidate interviewing for a job, be ready for what's your biggest weakness, and be ready for it being thrown at you bluntly. Be ready for multiple weaknesses if they don't buy the first one or they don't relate to the first one. Be ready for a second with the PowerPoint example, or there's a lot of examples. But, here's your weakness. Here's how you're working to overcome it. You may not have overcome it. Like, be sincere. It shows honesty. It shows you're a real person. But also shows how you're working through the process. And we all have weaknesses. I've got tons of them. Frankly, I don't have enough time to go through every one of them. But if you ask my wife, she may give you a couple. You can do this. You've got this. So what's your biggest weakness? You got this covered.